We will now introduce Lesson 6. Now, certain letters are called weak letters, and one particular category of weak letter are the quiescent letters. These are letters that under certain circumstances will lose their value as consonants and become quiescent or silent. They'll retain their value as consonants at the beginning of syllables, but at the end of syllables they'll tend to lose their value and blend in with the preceding vowel. So, for example, here you have the word Yishmael. Well, what you should have had, or at least what you originally had, would have been some sort of a shavah under the ayin. Should have been Yishmael. But what's happened is that the vowel has moved backwards, and now the aleph is quiet. It's as if it weren't there. If you deleted it, you'd still pronounce it Yishmael, with or without the aleph. Same thing with the word for beginning, which is reshit. It's from a root resh aleph sheen that's related to the word for head, rosh. But the aleph here has ceased to have any consonantal value. Reshit, if you wrote it without the aleph, would be pronounced exactly the same way, reshit. And so here the aleph has become quiescent. The addition of prefixes can also cause an aleph to become quiescent, especially with really common words like Elohim, God. So Elohim, God, used a couple thousand times in the Hebrew Bible. When you add preposition la to it, you would expect it to be le Elohim. That's how you start. But then what will happen is that you apply the rule of shavah. So here you have a shavah, a composite shavah, which is a hataf sagol, and a regular shavah, which is the shavah, and you'd expect it to go to resolve the two shavahs in a row. The first shavah will become the vowel of the half vowel. And so you would expect the form to be le Elohim, le Elohim. However, in this very common word Elohim, it takes one step further, in which you have the short A, sagol, the short E, sagol, and the short E, hataf sagol, and you will add them together to form a long vowel. You might imagine that arithmetically. A short E plus a short E can add together to form a long E. And so in this case, the short E under La and the short E under Elohim add together to form a long E, and so what you actually see will be Lelohim. And under that circumstance, the aleph has completely lost its value as a consonant. They still write it. That makes it easier to identify what your word is, but it has no sound. On the other hand, a less common word, Edom, when you add preposition la to that, so you want to say two or four Edom, you do get the le Edom, as you would expect, and it does not quiesce, even though it begins with an aleph. So it's a little bit unpredictable. The ones that do it tend to be the more common words. Same thing with a yod at the beginning of a word, especially when it begins with a shavah. So the word for Judah is Yehudah. And if you want to say two or four Judah, you would expect to put a lamed in front. And then you have two shavas in the row, so the first should become a hirik, so you'd expect it to be lihuda. But then the Masoretes reason, well, that's not pronounced any differently than if the yod were a pure vowel letter and you didn't have the shava. So they end up writing it just this way, lihuda. And the aleph has become quiescent. So that's about quiescent letters. A bit more about guttural letters and resh. The guttural letters, again, are aleph, hey, chet, and ayin. And the letter resh have several peculiarities. The gutturals in resh frequently appear with a vowels. Now that's less true of aleph. Aleph actually likes e vowels. Often takes the sagol or some corresponding hataf sagol. But the other ones prefer a vowels. And the gutturals and resh cannot be doubled by dagesh forte. They do not take a doubling dagesh, or dagesh lene as far as that goes. The guttural letters take compound shava rather than simple shava, at least in most cases, if it's a vocal shava, shall we say. That doesn't apply to resh as often, though occasionally you will get the composite form under the hataf type form under resh as well. So the gutturals in resh, they are weak letters and they behave in kind of peculiar sorts of ways. And with that in mind, we move on to the article before the weak letters. Again, the ordinary rule when you add article hey is that you have a hey with a patah and a doubling of the following consonant. But since certain letters cannot be doubled, what do you do when you have, say, a guttural? Well, in the case of the gutturals hey and het, you get a phenomenon which some grammars call virtual doubling. That is, you pretend you've doubled without doubling. So here you have the word hokmah, wisdom. If you want to talk about the wisdom, or wisdom as an abstraction, you might add the article, ha-hokmah, but you can't double the hey, and send, or excuse me, the het here. You can't double the het. So you put a patah, you try to double the het, and in my imagination, you put the dagesh in it. The het, my letters sometimes talk to me, so let me tell you their conversation. The het says, look, I don't like dageshes. You can't put one in my stomach. It'll make me sick. But article hey says, no, that's the rule. The rule is hey with a patah, and then I double you. But the het says, no, I'm a weak letter. I cannot be doubled. And anyway, the hey tries to double the het anyway. The het spits it out. It shoots off in outer space and disappears far, far away. Or to put it in my little imaginary form, you try to put a dagesh in the het. The het will say, no way, Jose, and it simply grabs an eraser and erases that het out of its middle because it will not accept it. Same thing would be true of a word beginning with hey. You have heikal, which is the word for temple. You add the article hey. You try to put a patah, double the the hey. First hey is the hey of the article. The second hey is the hey of the word. But again, it will not accept the hey, and it will simply spit it out. Now, in the case of words beginning with yod with a shava or mem with a shava, the dagesh forte is often omitted. So here you have a yod with a shavah under it. The article should be hey with a patah and then a doubling of the yod. But very often, words that begin with yod shavah or mem shavah will lose their doubling. There's actually a more complicated rule about that, but I think we'll wait till later to tell you about it. It's called the Ski-Man-Levy rule. It has to do with any letter, sibilant, a kof, a yod, mem or a nun, lamed or a vav, where you have a doubling followed by a vocal shavah. They'll often lose this doubling and become a silent shavah. And this would be an application of that rule. Though with the word Jew, it does tend to double the word for Jew, as you see here. Yehuda becomes Hay Yehuda with a doubling. A patah under the article is usually lengthened before resh, ayin, and aleph. So here you have the word for man, ish. Add the article hey. Well, what happens? You try to double the word for man, ish, but you can't double the aleph. But in the case of aleph, unlike hey and chet, it doesn't spit it out entirely, but it spits it out a little bit, and then it comes down and lengthens the vowel. So again, in my imagination, you're trying to put a dagesh in here. The aleph says, no, I'm a weak letter, it'll make me sick. But hey says, no, I'm going to do it anyway. He sticks it in here, but then it spits it immediately out. It comes down here and dribbles down and forms a patah. So ultimately, the form you end up with has a long A rather than a short A patah, a kamatz rather than a patah. If imagining that the letter spits out the dagesh and it dribbles down and makes it a long A helps you, well then think of it that way. If you want to think it in purely linguistic terms, to compensate for the inability to double, the vowel lengthens. It's called compensatory lengthening of the vowel. The vowel under the article changes to a sagol if the word begins with one of the following syllables, and there are exceptions to these rules. But if you have an unaccented hey with a kamatz under it, it will tend to have a sagol in the article. So the word for mountain is mountains, plural, is harim. The mountains is heharim. And basically it's chosen a e vowel in order to distinguish sounds a little bit better so they don't slur together. A unaccented ayin with a kamatz under it also ends up with a sagol under the hey. A chet, whether it's accented or not with a kamatz under it, also has that. So a wise man or a sage is hakam. Well, the sage is hey hakam. And a chet with a hataf kamatz under it, it also will end up with a sagol under the hey. So a month is chodesh, the plural is chodeshin, chodeshim, and you put a hey in front of it and it'll be a he chodeshim. Now several nouns, mostly those beginning with gutturals, the vowel next to the article lengthens to harmonize with the article. So you have the word for earth, eretz. Well, the earth is haaretz. Mountain is har. The mountain is hahar. The patah lengthens to kamatz. Here the sagol changed to kamatz. People, becomes ha'am, and the vowel under gan, garden, also lengthens.